Lisa Martinez rubbed her tired eyes and took another sip of cold coffee. The night shift at Monitoring Station Horizon's Edge was usually quiet. Too quiet. She had been listening to the same background static for 6 hours, watching the same empty readouts scroll across her screens. Space was big and mostly silent, which made her job both important and boring at the same time. The station floated at the edge of human space, a small metal home for 12 people whose job was to listen. They listened for signals from Earth. They listened for messages from other human colonies. Most importantly, they listened for anything that might be trying to talk to humanity from the vast darkness between the stars. Lisa stretched in her chair and glanced at the clock. 2 more hours until her shift ended. She was about to reach for her coffee again when something made her freeze. A new sound was coming through her headphones. It was faint, almost lost in the static, but it was definitely there. She leaned forward and adjusted the controls. The sound grew a little clearer. It was not random static. It had a pattern. Someone or something was trying to send a message. Her heart started beating faster. In 3 years working at the station, she had never picked up an unknown signal. She quickly started recording and ran the signal. Through the computer's analysis programs, the patterns were complex but definitely artificial. This was not some natural space phenomenon. This was communication. And it was not human. Lisa's hands shook slightly as she reached for the emergency communication button. Within minutes, Station Commander Jake Collins arrived in the communications room, his hair messy from sleep. "What do we have, Martinez?" Jake asked, pulling up a chair next to her workstation. "Unknown signal, sir. Artificial origin. The computer says it's not matching any known human communication protocols." Lisa played back the recorded signal. Even through the static, the intentional patterns were clear. Jake listened carefully, his expression growing more serious. "How far away? The signal is very weak. Based on signal strength and degradation patterns, I'd estimate at least 400 light years. Maybe more. 400 light years." Jake whistled softly. "That's far beyond any known human settlements. We need to get Ben in here." Ben Parker was the station's language expert and xenobiologist. He had spent years studying theoretical alien communication methods, always hoping that someday he would have a real signal to analyze. When Jake's call woke him up, Ben practically ran to the communications room in his pajamas. "Is this really it?" Ben asked breathlessly as he sat down at another workstation. "An actual alien transmission? That's what we need you to figure out," Jake replied. "Can you make sense of it?" Ben connected his specialized analysis equipment to Lisa's receivers and began working. He ran the signal through dozens of different filters and mathematical models, looking for patterns that might reveal meaning. Hours passed. Lisa brought fresh coffee for everyone. Jake contacted Earth Command to report the situation, but was told to continue analysis before sending any detailed reports. Ben worked steadily, occasionally muttering to himself as he adjusted his equipment. As the sun began to rise outside the station's windows, Ben suddenly sat up straight. "I've got something," he announced. "The signal is using prime number sequences as a base structure. That's a universal mathematical concept that any intelligent species should understand. And look at this." Ben displayed his analysis on the main screen. The signal was made up of repeated sections with slight variations. "This pattern here," Ben pointed to a series of peaks on the display, "it repeats every few minutes but with small changes. That's exactly what you'd expect from a distress call. The sender is repeating the same basic message but adding updates or additional information each time." Jake leaned forward. "So this is definitely a call for help?" "I'm 90% certain, yes. But Commander, there's something else, something important." Ben's voice became more excited. "The signal isn't being sent in just one direction. It's being broadcast in all directions across multiple frequencies. This isn't a message to a specific recipient. This is a general distress call to anyone who might be listening." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "They're calling out to the entire galaxy." "Exactly. And based on the power levels required for this kind of broadcast, whoever is sending this message is using enormous amounts of energy. This is not a small problem. This is a civilization-level emergency. Jake was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. Ben, can you decode any more details about what kind of help they need? Ben worked for another hour, running the signal through more complex analysis programs. Finally, he turned to face the others with a grim expression. I can only make out pieces, but it's not good. There are references to what might be enemy forces, destruction of population centers, and time. Running out? Based on the mathematical structures they're using to convey urgency, I'd estimate they have weeks, maybe less, before whatever is threatening them succeeds. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. An entire alien civilization is crying out for help, and we might be the only ones close enough to hear them. Actually, Commander, Lisa said quietly, we're probably not the only ones hearing this. A signal this powerful, broadcast in all directions, it would reach hundreds of star systems. Any spacefaring civilization within range would be picking this up. Then why aren't we detecting any response signals? Jake asked. Ben and Lisa looked at each other. They had been monitoring the communications channels for hours, and there had been no sign of anyone else responding to the distress call. Maybe the other civilizations are still analyzing it. Like we were, Ben suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. Jake turned back to them. Or maybe they've already decided it's not their problem. The three humans sat in silence, listening to the alien distress call that continued to repeat across the void. Somewhere, hundreds of light years away, an entire species was facing extinction and calling out for anyone who might help. The mathematical patterns in their message spoke of desperation and fading hope. Sir, Lisa said finally, what do we do? Jake looked at the communication console where the alien signal continued to play. Earth Command would need to be informed immediately. The government would need to decide whether humanity should respond to a call for help from a species they had never met, located farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. But looking at the faces of Lisa and Ben, Jake could see they had already made their decision in their hearts. The question was not whether humanity should help. The question was whether they could get there in time. We send everything we've got to Earth Command, Jake said firmly, and we recommend immediate action. Someone out there needs help, and we might be their only hope. As Lisa began preparing the data transmission to Earth, the alien distress call continued to echo through space, carrying its message of desperate need across the vast emptiness between the stars. The emergency meeting room in Earth's Defense Command felt smaller than usual. Admiral Ryan Foster looked around the large oval table at the faces of humanity's top military and scientific leaders. The alien distress call had been playing on repeat for 6 hours since the data arrived from Horizon's Edge Station. Everyone in the room had heard it dozens of times, but the weight of its meaning was still sinking in. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Colonel Amy Chun, leaning forward in her chair. We have received a cry for help from an alien civilization located in the Kepler 442 system. They are under attack by something they call the Devourer, and they estimate they have only weeks left before total extinction. That's correct, Admiral Foster replied. Our best analysis suggests the signal originated approximately 420 light-years from Earth. Dr. Matt Harrison, the lead xenobiologist on the Council, spoke up. The mathematical patterns in their message indicate a highly advanced but peaceful species. They're not warriors. Whatever they're facing, they're not equipped to fight it. Colonel Chun pulled up a star chart on her tablet. 420 light-years. Even with our fastest ships using maximum jump sequences, that's an 8-month journey. By the time we could get there, these aliens will have been dead for 6 months. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the harsh mathematics of space travel. Even humanity's most advanced faster-than-light drives could not cross such vast distances quickly. Space was simply too big. There's also the question of resources, added General Paul Martinez, the head of fleet operations. A rescue mission to Kepler 442 would require our largest ships and most experienced crews. If this Devourer is as dangerous as the aliens suggest, we might be sending our people to die for nothing. Admiral Foster studied the faces around the table. He could see the conflict in their expressions. These were good people who wanted to help, but they were also responsible for humanity's safety and survival. "What do we know about other civilizations' responses?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim, the diplomatic advisor. "Surely we're not the only ones who received this signal." "That's one of the most troubling aspects," Dr. Harrison replied. "We've been monitoring all known communication frequencies for over 12 hours. We've detected no response signals from any other species. Either no one else is listening or no one else cares to respond." The implications hit everyone at once. An entire species was crying out for help across hundreds of light years, and humanity appeared to be the only civilization willing to even consider helping. "Maybe they have good reasons not to respond," Colonel Chun said quietly. "Maybe they know something about this devourer that we don't. Maybe responding is suicide. Or maybe," said a new voice from the doorway, "they just don't have the guts to try." Everyone turned to see Captain Nick Rodriguez entering the room. He was supposed to be preparing his ship, the heavy cruiser Defiant, for a routine patrol mission. Instead, he had been listening to reports about the alien distress call. "Captain Rodriguez," Admiral Foster said with a slight smile, "I don't recall inviting you to this meeting." "With respect, sir, I invited myself. My ship is ready for immediate deployment, and my crew is already asking when we're going to help those aliens." Colonel Chung shook her head. "Captain, the distances involved make any rescue mission impossible. We simply cannot get there in time." Rodriguez walked to the display screen and brought up technical specifications for several experimental technologies. "What if we could cut that travel time in half, or more?" Dr. Kim looked at the data Rodriguez was showing. "These are the experimental quantum jump drives from the Titan research station. The ones that failed their last 3 test runs." "They didn't fail," Rodriguez corrected. "They succeeded, but with side effects we didn't expect. The drives can actually jump much farther than designed, but they create massive energy discharges that can damage ship systems. For a routine mission, that's unacceptable. For a rescue mission where time is everything, it might be worth the risk." Dr. Harrison was studying the technical data. According to this, a ship equipped with these experimental drives could reach Kepler 442 in 6 weeks instead of 8 months. "Exactly," Rodriguez said. 6 weeks might be cutting it close, but it's within the aliens' estimated timeline. We could actually get there while there's still someone left to save." Admiral Foster was quiet for a long moment, considering the possibilities. "Even if the experimental drives work perfectly, Captain, you'd be taking a small force against an enemy that has apparently defeated an entire advanced civilization. What could one human ship accomplish?" Rodriguez's expression became more serious. "Maybe nothing, sir, but maybe something. At minimum, we could gather intelligence about this devourer and find out what we're really dealing with. And if there's any way to help those aliens, even temporarily, we have to try." General Martinez looked skeptical. "This sounds like a suicide mission with extra steps." "No, sir," Rodriguez replied firmly. "This sounds like what humans do. We help people who need help, even when it's dangerous. Even when it seems impossible, that's who we are." Dr. Harrison nodded slowly. The captain has a point. This might be humanity's first contact with another intelligent species, and that contact is them asking for our help. How we respond will define us as a species for generations to come." Colonel Chun was still studying the technical data. "Even with the experimental drives, you'd need more than one ship. A single cruiser against a force that destroyed an entire civilization is not just dangerous, it's pointless." "I agree," Admiral Foster said. "If we're going to do this, we do it right." Captain Rodriguez leads an advanced reconnaissance force with 3 ships. The science vessel Discovery under Dr. Kate Williams for analysis and first contact protocols. The stealth frigate Shadow under Lieutenant Commander Dan Brooks for intelligence gathering. "And the main fleet?" asked General Martinez. "We prepare our largest battle group for a follow-up mission. If the advance team confirms the aliens are still alive and the situation can be salvaged, we send everything we have." Admiral Foster stood up. Operation Lighthouse. The advance team goes in fast and provides what help they can. The main fleet follows with enough firepower to face whatever this devourer really is. The room erupted in discussion as the reality of the decision sank in. Humanity was about to attempt the longest rescue mission in their history, racing across hundreds of light years to help a species they had never met. As the planning continued, a new signal arrived from Horizon's Edge station. The message was brief and devastating. The aliens' final orbital fortress had fallen. The survivors were retreating to their home planet's surface. Time was running out even faster than they had feared. But rather than discouraging the humans in the room, the news only strengthened their resolve. Someone out there needed help, and humanity was going to provide it. No matter how impossible it seemed, Captain Rodriguez smiled grimly as he looked at the star charts showing the route to Kepler 442. It would be the most dangerous mission any human had ever attempted. It might very well be a one-way trip, but it was also the right thing to do, and that made all the difference. Captain Nick Rodriguez felt his stomach drop as the Defiant emerged from its final quantum jump. The Kepler 442 system spread out before them, and it was nothing like what they had expected to find. "Dear God," whispered Lieutenant Amy Foster from the navigation station, "what happened here?" Where 3 planets should have been orbiting the system's yellow star, there were only scattered asteroid fields. But these were not natural asteroids. They gleamed with processed metals and geometric shapes that could only be artificial. 3 entire worlds had been torn apart and converted into raw materials. "Sensors are picking up massive debris fields," reported Chief Williams from the science station. "The composition matches what you'd expect from dismantled cities, orbital stations, and industrial facilities. These planets were stripped down to their core elements." Rodriguez clenched his jaw. They had known the situation was bad, but seeing the destruction with their own eyes was different. 3 civilizations worth of people had once lived on those worlds. Now they were nothing but floating scrap metal. "Captain," called Communications Officer Lisa Park, "I'm detecting the 4th planet. Zephyr Prime is still there, but it's under heavy attack. Massive energy discharges, defensive shield fluctuations. Whatever's happening down there, it's not going well." Through the main viewing screen, they could see the distant planet surrounded by flashes of light. Even from millions of miles away, the signs of battle were clear. "Status on the Discovery and Shadow?" Rodriguez asked. "Both ships emerged successfully from quantum jump," Foster reported. "Dr. Kate Williams reports her science equipment is online and scanning. Lieutenant Commander Don Brooks confirms his stealth systems are operational." Rodriguez opened a communication channel to both ships. "Discovery, Shadow, we're looking at a worst-case scenario here. 3 worlds completely destroyed. The 4th under siege. We need intelligence fast." Dr. Williams' voice came through clearly from the Discovery. "Captain, I'm detecting thousands of artificial constructs around Zephyr Prime. They appear to be self-replicating mining and construction units, but they're armed with advanced weapon systems. This must be the devourer the aliens warned us about." "Shadow here," added Lieutenant Commander Brooks. "I'm seeing attack patterns that suggest a hive mind intelligence. These things are coordinating their assault with perfect timing. No wasted movements, no redundant attacks. It's like watching a machine think." Rodriguez studied the tactical display. The devourer swarm consisted of thousands of ships ranging from small fighters to massive construction vessels the size of Earth's largest space stations. They moved with mathematical precision, attacking the planet's defensive shields in calculated patterns designed to overwhelm and drain the defenders' energy. "Sir," Park said urgently, "I'm receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's weak, but I think someone down there is trying to talk to us. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was clearly not human. It had a musical quality with tones that rose and fell in ways human vocal cords could never achieve. But the universal translation software managed to convert it into understandable English. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Vexai of the Zephyrian Defense Force. Please identify yourselves." Are you here to help us? Rodriguez took a deep breath. This was humanity's first real conversation with an alien species, and it was happening in the middle of a war zone. Commander Vexhai, this is Captain Rodriguez of the human vessel Defiant. We received your distress call and came as fast as we could. What's your current situation? There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. When he did, his voice carried a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. You came. After all this time, someone actually came. Captain Rodriguez, we are the last survivors of the Zephyrian Alliance. Our orbital defenses fell 3 days ago. We have perhaps 6 hours before our planetary shields collapse completely. After that, the Devourer will strip our world like it. Did the others? Dr. Williams broke into the conversation from the Discovery. Commander Vexhai, this is Dr. Williams. Can you tell us about the enemy's capabilities? We need to understand what we're fighting. The Devourer is an ancient war machine. Dr. Williams, it was created by a species that destroyed itself eons ago, but their creation continues to spread across the galaxy. It learns from every civilization it encounters, adapting to counter their defensive strategies. It has consumed 17 different species over the centuries. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his crew. 17 civilizations. The scope of the threat was becoming clear. Commander, what kind of defenses have you tried against it? Everything we could think of, Vexhai replied sadly. Energy barriers, particle beam weapons, quantum disruptors, even temporal displacement fields. The Devourer analyzed each defense and developed countermeasures within hours. We are a peaceful people, Captain. Our technology was built for exploration and harmony, not warfare. Lieutenant Commander Brooks spoke up from the shadow. Captain, I'm detecting something interesting. The Devourer ships are repositioning in response to our presence, but their movements seem confused. They're running multiple conflict resolution algorithms, like they can't decide how to classify our ships. Dr. Williams added her analysis. That makes sense. The Devourer has probably never encountered human technology before. Our ships don't fit the patterns it expects from advanced civilizations. Rodriguez felt an idea forming. Dr. Williams, what if that's exactly what we need? You said this thing learns from every civilization it fights, but it can only learn from predictable responses. What are you thinking, Captain? I'm thinking. We don't fight like an advanced civilization. We fight like humans. Rodriguez opened the channel to both his escort ships. Discovery, Shadow, here's what we're going to do. Brooks, I want you to take the Shadow in close to the swarm. Don't engage directly, just get their attention and then run. But don't run in a straight line. Make random course changes, use unpredictable acceleration patterns, make them chase you. Understood, Captain. Flying crazy is something I can do. Dr. Williams, I want you to target individual Devourer ships with every different type of sensor scan you have. Overwhelm their data collection. Systems with information that doesn't make sense, confuse them. Captain, Chief Williams called from the science station. Sensors show the planetary shields are down to 30% power. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. Rodriguez turned to his tactical officer. Prepare all weapons. We're going to hit the Devourer formation with everything we have, but not where they expect it. Sir? The officer asked, confused. Target the smaller ships that are supporting the main assault. Ignore the big targets completely. Use kinetic weapons instead of energy beams. Fire in volleys instead of sustained bursts. Do everything wrong according to standard military doctrine. As the 3 human ships moved toward the massive swarm, Rodriguez watched the Devourer's response patterns on his screens. The ancient AI was trying to analyze their approach, but human tactics didn't fit any of its programmed responses. When the Shadow suddenly accelerated toward the swarm in a chaotic spiral pattern, the Devourer ships hesitated for almost 3 seconds before responding. In space combat, 3 seconds was an eternity. When the Discovery began flooding the area with contradictory sensor data, several Devourer vessels actually stopped moving entirely, as if their processing systems were overloaded, and when the Defiant Open fire with a spread of kinetic projectiles that seemed to target random ships with no tactical significance. The swarm's coordinated assault pattern faltered for the first time in days. "Captain," Park reported excitedly, "the planetary shields are stabilizing. The Devourer has pulled back to regroup." Rodriguez smiled grimly. They had bought the Zephyrians some time, but he knew it wouldn't last long. The Devourer was already adapting to their unconventional tactics. Soon it would learn to counter human unpredictability just like it had learned to counter every other species. But for now, for the first time in months, the aliens on Zephyr Prime had reason to hope. The space around Kepler 442 suddenly filled with brilliant flashes of light as ship after ship dropped out of quantum jump. Captain Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the largest fleet in human history materialized around them. "Holy ... whispered Lieutenant Foster, then caught herself. "Sorry, sir. I've just never seen so many ships in one place." Rodriguez smiled despite the desperate situation. Admiral Foster had not been joking when he promised to send everything they had. Over 200 human vessels now filled the space around Zephyr Prime, from massive dreadnoughts the size of city blocks to nimble corvettes that darted between the larger ships like schools of fish. "Captain Rodriguez," came Admiral Foster's voice over the communication system. "Good to see you're still in one piece. What's the situation?" "Admiral, the Devourer has adapted to our initial tactics faster than expected. We managed to buy the Zephyrians about 18 hours, but the swarm is learning. They're starting to counter our unpredictability." "Understood. We're implementing Doctrine Chaos immediately. All ships begin random engagement patterns on my mark." Rodriguez watched the tactical display as the human fleet spread out in what looked like complete disorder. Ships moved in different directions with no apparent coordination. Some accelerated toward the Devourer swarm, others seemed to retreat, and a few appeared to be moving in circles for no reason. Commander Vexhi's voice came through the communication system, filled with confusion. "Captain Rodriguez, your fleet appears to be malfunctioning. Your ships are not following any recognizable formation." "That's the point, Commander," Rodriguez replied. "Watch what happens to the Devourer's response." On the main screen, they could see the enemy swarm hesitating. The Devourer ships had been moving to intercept what they calculated would be the human fleet's attack patterns, but those patterns kept changing in ways that made no mathematical sense. Dr. Williams spoke up from the Discovery. "Admiral, I'm seeing massive processing delays in the Devourer network. Their central coordination system is trying to run thousands of different scenario calculations simultaneously. They can't predict what we're going to do next because we're not following any logical plan." "Perfect," Admiral Foster replied. "All ships engage at will. Remember, if it makes sense tactically, don't do it. If it seems wasteful or stupid, do it twice." What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded history. Human ships attacked from impossible angles, used weapons in ways they were never designed for, and employed tactics that would have gotten any military academy student failed for poor judgment. The heavy cruiser Montana attacked a massive Devourer construction ship by ramming it at full speed, something that should have destroyed both vessels. Instead, the Montana's reinforced hull punched through the enemy ship's delicate internal structure like a bullet through glass. The destroyer Phoenix fired all of its missiles at once in a spread pattern that wasted 90% of its ammunition. But the 10% that hit their targets struck Devourer ships that had calculated they were completely safe based on human firing solutions. Most confusing of all, the carrier Washington launched all of its fighter squadrons not at enemy ships, but at empty space, where they proceeded to fly in formations that looked more like aerial acrobatics than military maneuvers. "Admiral," called Captain Linda Shaw from the Washington, "the Devourer is trying to follow our fighters, but they keep breaking formation and regrouping in patterns that don't match any known tactical doctrine. The enemy fighters are literally flying into each other, trying to intercept targets that aren't going where they're supposed to go." Commander Vexhi's voice held a note of amazement. "Captain Rodriguez, your people fight like like music that has no rhythm but somehow still sounds beautiful. How do you coordinate without following patterns? We don't coordinate, Commander, we improvise. Every human captain out there is making their own decisions based on what feels right at the moment. No central plan, no predictable responses, just controlled chaos. The tide of battle began to shift as the Devourer swarm found itself unable to counter tactics that had no logical foundation. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tony Valdez, the chief engineer aboard the cruiser Denver, noticed something strange in his engine readings. The quantum jump drives that had brought the fleet to Kepler 442 were still generating unusual energy patterns even after the ships had stopped jumping. Captain Morris, Valdez called to his commanding officer, I'm seeing interference in the Devourer communication frequencies every time we cycle our FTEL drives. It's like our quantum engines are jamming their hive mind somehow. Captain Morris immediately contacted Admiral Foster with the discovery. Within minutes, every ship in the human fleet was cycling their FTL drives in random patterns, creating waves of quantum interference throughout the battle zone. The effect on the Devourer was immediate and dramatic. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began operating independently. Without their hive mind connection, individual Devourer vessels became confused and vulnerable. All ships, Admiral Foster commanded, focus your attacks on isolated enemy vessels. Use your FTL drives to create interference zones around groups of enemy ships, then attack the ones that get cut off from the swarm. The human fleet began working in small groups, each team using their quantum drives to isolate sections of the Devourer swarm and then overwhelming the disconnected enemy ships with concentrated firepower. Rodriguez watched as the massive enemy formation, which had seemed invincible just hours before, began to fall apart. Devourer ships that had operated with machine-like precision were now making mistakes, firing at empty space and even occasionally shooting at each other. Captain, reported Chief Williams excitedly, the planetary shields are back up to full power. The Zephyrians are using the breathing room to repair their defensive systems. Dr. Williams added from the Discovery, I'm detecting massive system failures throughout the Devourer network. Without their central coordination, they're struggling to maintain even basic formation integrity. But the ancient enemy was not finished yet. Even as the outer edges of the swarm fell to human attacks, the core vessels were adapting once again. They began operating in smaller, independent groups that could function without constant hive mind communication. Admiral, Rodriguez called out, the Devourer is learning to work around our interference. They're breaking into autonomous units. Then we adapt too, Foster replied. All ships begin focusing on the largest enemy vessels. If they want to fight as individuals instead of a swarm, we'll show them what human individuals can do when they work together. The battle raged for 6 more hours. Human ships darted in and out of the Devourer formation like angry hornets, striking at critical targets and then vanishing before the enemy could respond effectively. The key difference was that while the Devourer had to learn and adapt to each new human tactic, the humans simply changed their approach whenever something stopped working. As the local star began to set on Zephyr Prime's main continent, the space around the planet was filled with the wreckage of Devourer ships. The ancient swarm that had consumed 17 civilizations was finally meeting its match, but Rodriguez knew the real test was still coming. According to the Zephyrians, the Devourer's true power lay in its massive mothership, a vessel so large it had its own gravitational field, and that ship was moving toward Zephyr Prime for a final assault. The massive shape that emerged from behind Zephyr Prime's largest moon was unlike anything the human fleet had ever seen. The Devourer mothership was not just large, it was incomprehensibly huge. Sensors indicated it was over 50 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide, with a mass greater than some asteroids. Sweet mother of ... Captain Rodriguez started, then stopped himself. Even his usual calm was shaken by the sight of the enormous vessel. Admiral Foster's voice came through the communication system, tight with concern. All ships maintain current positions. Do not, repeat, do not approach the mothership until we understand its capabilities. Dr. Williams was frantically scanning the massive vessel from the Discovery. Admiral, I'm reading energy signatures that are off the charts. This thing has enough power to destroy entire fleets. And sir, it's not just a ship. It's some kind of mobile construction facility. I can see it manufacturing new Devourer units even as we watch. Commander Vexhia's voice carried pure terror. Captain Rodriguez, that is the heart of the Devourer. Our legends speak of it. Every civilization that has encountered it has been completely destroyed. It carries the combined knowledge and weapons of 17 different species. Lieutenant Sam Torres, piloting his fighter from the carrier Washington, felt his hands shake as he looked at the mothership through his cockpit window. He was 22 years old, and this was his first real combat mission. Everything about the massive enemy vessel screamed death and destruction. The mothership began moving toward Zephyr Prime with slow, deliberate menace. As it approached, smaller Devourer ships emerged from hangar bays along its hull like angry insects. Hundreds of them, then thousands, forming a protective cloud around their mother vessel. Admiral, called Captain Morris from the Denver, the mothership is charging some kind of main weapon. Energy readings are spiking beyond anything we've seen. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Admiral Foster commanded, do not let that thing get a clear shot at the planet. The human fleet scattered in all directions as a beam of pure energy lanced out from the mothership's forward section. The beam missed Zephyr Prime but struck one of the planet's moons, instantly vaporizing half of the rocky satellite. Dear God, whispered someone over the communication channel. It can destroy moons. Admiral Foster knew they were facing their greatest challenge yet. The mothership was too large and too well defended for conventional attacks. But as he watched the massive vessel prepare for another shot at the planet, an idea began to form. All ships, listen carefully. We can't destroy that thing with external attacks, but what if we could get inside it? Dr. Williams immediately understood. Admiral, if we could reach the mothership's central processing core and damage it, the cascade failure might destroy the entire vessel. Exactly, but getting inside would be a suicide mission. Those defensive ships will tear apart anything that gets close. That was when Lieutenant Torres spoke up. His voice was young and uncertain, but determined. Admiral, my fighter is damaged. From the earlier battle. Engines are failing, weapons are almost empty, and life support is acting up. I'm not going to make it back to the carrier anyway. Torres, what are you saying? I'm saying I volunteer for the suicide mission, sir. My fighter is small enough to slip through their defenses if I'm lucky, and I've got nothing left to lose. Admiral Foster was quiet for a moment. Sending a young pilot to his death went against everything he believed in. But looking at the mothership, preparing to destroy Zephyr Prime, he realized they had no choice. Torres, are you absolutely certain about this? Yes, sir. Someone has to try, and my ship is the only one damaged enough to look harmless to their sensors. Captain Rodriguez broke into the conversation. Torres, I'm sending you the mothership's structural data. Dr. Williams has identified what looks like the central core about 15 kilometers inside the main hull. If you can reach it and detonate your remaining missiles inside that chamber, the explosion might cause a chain reaction. Understood, Captain. Beginning approach now. Lieutenant Torres turned his battered fighter toward the massive mothership and began flying directly at it. His engine was sputtering, leaving a trail of plasma behind him that made the fighter look like a piece of debris rather than a threat. The thousands of Devourer defender ships ignored the apparently dying fighter as it drifted toward their mothership. Torres had to fight to keep his hands steady as the enormous vessel grew larger and larger in his cockpit window. Torres, came Dr. Williams' voice, I'm tracking your approach. You need to find an access port about halfway down the ship's port side. The computer systems there should give you access to the interior. Torres found the opening and carefully maneuvered his fighter inside. The interior of the mothership was like flying through a mechanical city. Corridors stretched in all directions, filled with maintenance robots and construction equipment that paid no attention to one small human fighter. Following Dr. Williams' directions, Torres navigated deeper into the massive vessel. His damaged engines made flying difficult, and several times he nearly crashed into the walls of the narrow passages. "Torres, you're almost there," Dr. Williams reported. "The central core should be directly ahead of you." Torres emerged into a vast chamber at the heart of the mothership. In the center floated a crystalline structure that pulsed with energy, clearly the brain of the entire Devourer network. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like a technological heart, pumping death throughout the galaxy. "This is it," Torres said quietly. "I can see the core." Beginning attack run. He armed his remaining missiles and dove toward the crystal structure. At the last moment, Devourer defense systems finally recognized the threat and began firing at his fighter. Energy beams flashed past his cockpit as he fought to maintain his trajectory. "For humanity!" Torres shouted as he fired all his missiles directly into the central core and crashed his fighter into the crystalline structure. The explosion was brilliant and brief. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then cracks began spreading through the crystal. The cracks became fractures, the fractures became breaks, and suddenly the entire core shattered into a million pieces. The effect was immediate. Throughout the mothership, systems began failing in cascade. The massive vessel shuddered and began breaking apart as its internal power systems overloaded. Without the central core, the thousands of Devourer ships throughout the system suddenly stopped moving. Their hive mind connections severed forever. Admiral Foster watched through the main viewing screen as the mothership that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia tore itself apart in a chain of explosions. The ancient enemy that had destroyed 17 civilizations was finally dead. In the hours that followed, the Zephyrians emerged from their underground shelters to find their world safe for the first time in months. Commander Vexhai met with Admiral Foster and Captain Rodriguez aboard the Defiant, where the foundation was laid for a new alliance between their species. "We owe you everything," Vexhai said simply. "But more than that, you have shown us something we had forgotten. That sometimes the right thing to do is to help others, even when it seems impossible." Admiral Foster smiled. "Commander, that's just what humans do. We help people who need help." As the combined human and Zephyrian fleets began the work of rebuilding the destroyed system, something remarkable happened across the galaxy. Radio telescopes detected response signals from dozens of other civilizations, finally answering distress calls they had previously ignored. Humanity had not just saved one species. They had reminded the entire galaxy what it meant to stand up for others, no matter the cost. The age of looking the other way when civilizations cried for help was ending, and a new era of cooperation and mutual aid was beginning, and at the center of it all was the simple, human truth that Lieutenant Sam Torres had died to prove. Sometimes someone has to try, even when success seems impossible.